Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever we are in the world right now. We have a very, very special guest this morning. Being a Shrewsbury-based agency, we've been looking forward to welcome Mr. Kawczynski, Mr. Daniel Kawczynski, our Shrewsbury MP. The idea of this is just to help share some more information. It's not to lobby anything, it's not to influence anyone, it's literally a sharing of information exercise. So instead of is it PMQs? We're doing MPQs with Daniel Kawczynski. Daniel, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are we?
Very well, thank you.
You've had an early one this morning, though, right? I believe you were on the train at like 6 o'clock from London.
Well, I caught the 6:16 from Euston, changing at Birmingham International, and I'm here at Apchen Business Park at 10 o'clock.
And we've got the new mugs, mate. We rolled them out for you.
Marvellous.
So, look, today, top 5 is probably the big thing, I think, that I would like to talk about today. Probably try and dig into what they are for you, how you've come about them. I know we spoke previously on the earlier podcast, but I suppose today is just an effort or an attempt to probably go a bit deeper, understand the motivations. It's something shared, engagement certainly up. People are starting to understand that the information is probably more accessible. So walk us through your top 5.
Well, I think before I walk through the top 5, I think it's very important to reiterate that there are 650 MPs, and when you become a member of Parliament, nobody gives you a script or a guidebook as to what you should do. I think each member of Parliament does the job very differently.
Right.
What concerns me are the lack of commercial people in the House of Commons. There are only about
that's a shared view.
There are only about 20 of us.
Really?
650 who studied business studies at university and who worked in the commercial sector. There are huge numbers of barristers, trade unionists, social workers, people from the NHS, but very few commercial people are entering politics. And I think that's a real worry.
Yep.
Because if you have studied business studies, which I did for 4 years at university, and then you've worked in the real commercial world, which I did for 14 years, when you become a member of Parliament, everybody is trying to pull you in different directions. That's the nature of a democracy. So you've got 82,000 constituents. People are writing to you every day, but they're pulling you in different directions. And what you've got to do, I think, as a member of Parliament, is to identify the top 5 infrastructure projects which you consider will have a disproportionately advantageous economic impact on your constituency.
Yeah.
And so inevitably, for me, one of our top projects is flooding. I think
say it's a huge one, so we'll flick up some content because Gaz, during the floods, was out with the drone. So, and I've lived here my entire life, so I'm 40 now. So I'd say it's an exceptionally large problem. But look, for that one, it's not just here. It's a long river, right? So there's.
Well, you see, one thing I've learned in my 19 years as a member of Parliament is you can't operate by yourself in a silo. You've got to try to create the biggest possible caucus in order to collectively go in and lobby the Treasury or the Department of DEFRA. So what I've done is I've created a caucus of 37 MPs, all of whom have the River Severn flowing through their constituencies.
Yep.
So when we flood, Bewdley, Worcester, many other communities down the river. Now, in the old days, what we did is build small flood defences.
Yeah, just push it further on.
I'm all right, Jack. Yeah. You deal with it further downstream. Now that we're out of the European Union, we don't need to comply with the common agricultural policy imposed on us by the European Union.
That was stopping some of this, or the fundamentals of what your project is now able to do?
Oh, absolutely. Because when we were in the European Union, we had to comply with all the rules and regulations of the European Parliament, and they prohibited us from paying landowners and farmers to hold on to water.
Wow.
Now that we're outside of the European Union, we can do what we like.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is to manage the river holistically. So yes, flood barriers are important, and certain very sensitive areas will require additional flood
But
barriers.
that's a defence issue around a building or entity, isn't it? It's not a measure to stop these things, as you've probably...
That's a defence measure
Yeah.
for certain areas. So Mr. Blair, for example, came to a very flooded Shrewsbury in 1999, 2000, I think it was. He said, quote, "We will protect you from flooding." Well, what happened? We had a flood barrier which protects Frankwell car park and 38 houses.
Yeah.
We're not interested in those
Stopping the problem, root cause.
we want to hold more water
Yeah.
upstream across the border in Wales.
Right.
And by the way, may I say unequivocally that the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Private Secretary, the MP for Montgomeryshire, is very supportive of our plans.
Good.
Because he understands that it could be extremely lucrative and very beneficial for his farmers across the border in Wales. So it's good for the union
Yep.
because we want to demonstrate the collaboration and interdependence that exists between England and Wales on finding solutions, whether it's related to transport or flooding.
Yep.
There are some people who are trying to pull our island apart. Some of us believe in the union and in collaboration between the four entities that comprise the United Kingdom. So it's good for that.
Yep.
And it's good for the farmers across the border. And also, we've worked out, and this is where I go back to the business case training and the business studies. I got initially in 2019 £50 million. We brought the minister to a very flooded Colham. He met the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker in Colham.
Yeah.
A lot of very angry people whose homes and residences and property
Yeah, it's
and
getting
businesses
worse each year.
have been flooded on an annual basis. We got an initial £50 million for some projects, but also to come up with a business case as to how you manage the entire river. We've done the business plan. We've submitted it to Treasury,
Yeah.
and now we are seeking 500 million. Not
Half
as
a billion, big number.
half a billion, not as a plea or begging, but giving a business case to government. And
Yeah, look, I'm gonna intervene, not to make me rude, because I just want people to know. In the short time I've been in and around this sphere of politics, just trying to learn a little bit more. It's a point of interest, or has been, did me well in my career. Is the work you've done, and I think we'll go on to all of this, is very pragmatic. I would definitely salute you, and there's no emotion or no personal drivers that I've been able to identify at this point. So I think that's keen, and I think when you probably out of the top five you mentioned, this one where you've got 38 other MPs, the river it's the longest river in the UK. I'm saying that without
Yes,
Jamie. So. It's the longest river in the UK, and we'll flash some stuff up here. There's taken 38 other MPs. Who I'd imagine there's quite a lot of big characters in there that probably have their own agendas to pull in. You're cross-border. And I think for me, as a businessman, it's a passion point of mine. It's the upside. So you reduce the flooding issue. I'm sure how many more properties can then get insured, developments for houses because places are growing, business insurance, I guess there's probably I mean, how you even get business insurance if you have a business in Frankwell?
You can't.
I mean, yeah, well,
and I've
nuts.
been taken to hotels in Shrewsbury that can't get insurance, so that when their cellars or wine cellars or anything is flooded, all the stock has to be thrown away. But 500 million, people say to me, gosh, 500 million's a lot, isn't it? But the business case, and this is why I think having commercial people in the House of Commons is so important, because what we've done, what I've said to Mr. Finkelstein, who is the chief senior advisor to the Chancellor, and the Chancellor has given me an ability to engage with his most senior civil servant, Simon Finkelstein, to convince him of the probity of this business case. What we're saying is, give us 500 million, but the GVA...
I was going to say the return's going to be huge.
The GVA uplift, the gross
investment,
is 150 billion.
Wow.
They've worked out that for a $500 million investment,
20x,
that there's a huge return. And the other thing that the Chancellor said, which is fascinating, is there's nobody else in the United Kingdom that is doing what you're doing. Other rivers flood.
How much did we spend on
no
COVID?
other MP has tried to create this sort of...
I know. How much did we spend on COVID?
450 billion.
You've just solved 25% of that problem. Someone stamp it.
Well, if it comes to fruition. But this is something, you've got to have business, you've got to have priorities.
Agreed.
Which are achievable today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year.
Yep.
But then some projects will inevitably take a significant amount of time and effort. When you plant a row of trees, you may not enjoy the shade, but somebody who follows you will.
Yes,
But
yeah.
you still want to plant the trees knowing that they will protect the person who follows you. Now, it's going to take a long time to finally manage the River Severn, but it's this innovative thinking that we are pursuing now, which will have such a transformatory impact on Shrewsbury and future generations of people who want to invest in Shrewsbury.
Agreed. Well, and all the way down the river, I think it's quite interesting that your passion and driver started with the hometown, of which I'm from. Salut. But no, look, good. So I think that was really interesting. More interestingly, why the river? How did you get onto it? What was the key moment? When did that start?
Oh, I think that was inevitably because, and it's a very good question because you see, you have to justify. I think you have to justify the priorities that you have as a member of Parliament.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
and that,
as you do in business,
and that when somebody challenges you, for example, why are you spending so much time on flooding? Why do you raise this issue so often in the House of Commons at Prime Minister's questions? Why do you have so many debates on this issue in the House of Commons and asking so many questions on this? I tell you why. It's I've rarely seen such a collective sense of anger and frustration.
yeah, it's a heated time when the river's up.
An Englishman's home is his castle.
Yeah, very true.
And when you have, when you have dirty, filthy water, and I know one lady, by the way, who I won't name her, but I know one lady who lives very close to the tennis courts in Shrewsbury, whose home is flooded every year.
Oh yeah, is that the pink house?
Yes.
The pink house. Yeah, I mean you've got people, and it's
flooded every year, and
of
I,
times.
as the MP, am brought into these properties, so people show me what's happened to their personal items, what's happened to their treasures, and how the house has
So
been
she got tiled floor now, or still got carpet?
tiled floor, but. And
You shouldn't have to worry about it, should you?
And people are trying to do. I mean, I live in Coleham, and my next door neighbours have built a wall around their property. The next door apartment building, they have paid for metal slots. Or
So they can slide the slats in.
So they are creating their own barriers. So a lot of people are doing their own thing, but that's piecemeal. What the MP has a responsibility for, a seat which floods on an annual basis, this is why it's such a priority.
Agreed. Well, I'd imagine it's more than once. I mean, the river's been up 3-4 times this year already.
Oh,
So
I mean,
those guys, where or ladies and gentlemen, where you are, have probably had it a couple of times. I mean, it must be.
One thing that we can definitely say is, I believe unequivocally, that in the future, I mean, if the trajectory and the speed of what we've seen over the last 20 years is replicated to any similar degree over the next 20 years, the situation is going to get even worse.
Yeah, in a huge way. I mean, I've got a very good friend, Ollie Parry, Sloping Pub. I mean, I've been speaking to him yesterday. I mean, every time that happens, poor blokes. I mean, the barrels are floating around there, the basement, and they. So, but look, I think flooding's been good. We've only got you for a short time.
Yes.
You've got your security detail giving me hard finish times. So next one is, because I want to get through some of this, which is your in the 5. I'm going to use the word favourite. Lean into one that you'd like to talk about next.
Well, for me, being commercial, and being from the commercial.
He's done business, in case anyone didn't know.
For me, the town centre redevelopment.
The renovation.
The renovation. Shrewsbury has more, as I keep saying in the House of Commons, Shrewsbury has more listed buildings than any other town in England. That's our USP.
Yep.
Remarkable, isn't it?
Some heritage. In fact, Tom Hardy's been here most recently filming in an old film, I believe, isn't it? Due to the history and the strong heritage.
Many films have been taken in Shrewsbury because of our historic beauty. But somehow, in the 60s and 70s, these architects and planners and designers, I think, lost their heads and started to build some of these horrendous...
I mean, it's an awful... Like the
I call the Riverside Shopping Centre Pyongyang, circa 1978. and it hasn't
Flash a photo up of that.
it hasn't withstood the test of time.
It'd stand a nuclear bomb, that place, I reckon.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's horrendous. It's depressing.
But think about it. The fascinating thing here is that area in Shrewsbury, and they're right in the heart. So we've got these beautiful buildings, but the very epicenter of the offering
It's a bomb site.
is awful.
Yeah.
And so how do we compete against Telford? How do we compete against Chester?
Chester's lovely as well.
And actually, interestingly, the council have employed the services of a company called Rivington Hark, which I'd like you to Google. They're based in Mayfair.
Yep.
They have transformed Chester town
Yeah,
centre.
right.
And that's one of the reasons why the council have employed a Rivington Hark. Now, I went to the government and I lobbied for money from the Levelling Up Fund. You've heard of the Levelling Up Fund. And I convinced the government to give Shropshire Council the seed funding to start the process of planning for the demolition of this whole area. And, you know, people like Mark Barrow, Senior Director at Shropshire
Met
Council. Mark Barrow.
very good guy.
Very good guy, Senior Director. He said to me,
Loves his biking.
does he?
Yeah.
Really? That's good to know.
Topped
I didn't know that. Should I tell him?
Yeah, we had
I'm
dinner
meeting
together.
him at the Shire Hall later.
Yeah,
So they
he
said-
loves a good cycle. That's Mark.
So what he says to me is, we bulldoze all of this down, there will be hundreds of millions of pounds.
Oh,
of
massive. I
private
mean, we've seen the
sector
plans.
investment.
Jamie, flash the plans up.
Right. So hundreds of millions, but not just hundreds of millions. It's also going to create a construction boom for local companies. And again, why?
Yeah. How's that going?
Leaving the European Union, when we were members of the European Union, we had to put out a tender for the whole of Europe.
Another benefit of leaving
Another
the EU.
benefit of leaving the
I was a leaver.
Now, the council has an ability within the framework to
lean into local.
to give extra weight
Yeah.
for selecting.
Oh,
local-
fine, for the tender process. I get
Yes.
you. Okay, so guys, I put this out, so I'm going to deviate a little bit.
So very important for construction, Salopian construction
I've got a
companies.
lot of friends in the, and we both have guys with business partners. So when we first spoke about this, I did push it out there. So if there's people around the town that's watching this, we'll put a link up. There's bound to be a link somewhere we can share where you get some more information. But if you're a local building company, in fact, a very good friend of ours does a lot of R&D, I believe, in construction. So he'll probably be a good source. But yeah, I think that's probably a good point on this podcast, because a lot of local people watch this, is if you're a local construction company, this is a real opportunity to get source some work that's going to be local and have a direct benefit on the hometown you live in. But yeah, carry on. Sorry,
So
derailed you.
So that's it. So that's the town centre redevelopment, which I think will have a huge impact on local jobs, potentially create. We want to compete against Telford as assiduously as
So
possible.
how's that measured then in your heads? When you say compete, is there any numbers we know? Do we know what visitors it attracts? I mean, I know the population difference massive, 80 to 220,000 people.
Well, it's not for me as the MP to micromanage what goes in on the site.
Fine.
When it's redeveloped. But clearly, hotels.
Yeah.
I mean, there has been a paucity of five-star hotels in Shrewsbury, or high-end hotels. I've only just now managed to stop the Lion Hotel being used to house asylum seekers. But there has been a paucity of hotels, commercial, residential offerings. There will be parks. I mean, this is why the council are having a public consultation now, so that members of the public can also have a direct say as to how the town centre is redeveloped.
Good. So if people want to learn more about that, fire in your questions, because we're going to do a bit of this at least once a month. But we've got a question, so we're going to do this first one. It's a great time to do this. So the Lion Hotel, I believe we've had, and this is from social media, my good friend Gaz put this up. So David Turner started a bit of a thread. So reference the Lion Hotel, and we're being very transparent here. So I think what I think must be frustrating as an MP is a lot of this goes online. There's a lot of keyboard warriors not saying anything. I've got no opinion or judgment on what we're about to read or say, but I believe it's giving everyone a voice.
May I just say, the gentleman at the top who has a photograph of, I think, what is that, a dog, David Turner, when he says, apparently our invisible MP. May I say to Mr. Turner, I think it's very important.
So let me just read let me read this out so we can do this. So apparently our invisible MP, where are you, Daniel? Where's Daniel gone? Oh, sorry. he's not invisible, I can see him, has been pressuring the government, his government, to end the current contract with the hotel. He states that as a tourist town, it is wholly inappropriate for a hotel of this kind in the centre of town to be used for the purpose that it has been. Well, I'd say so, but that's only my opinion. I hope he remembers his words if and when any planning permission is sought to change it into apartments. Not sure why he'd want to do that. He doesn't like his hotel, maybe. It is also strange that he's been silent on the situation for so long, only to now what appears to be taking credit on the ending of the contract. You would think there is an election happening soon.
Well,
The
cynicism from some people is fascinating. But may I just say to him,
perhaps
when he says invisible, there are very, very few actually jobs where everything that you do is recorded.
Of course, yeah, everything you guys do is recorded.
You see, the fascinating thing is, if he wants to know what I'm doing on behalf of Shrewsbury, there is a public record.
Hey, no, now's the chance. So
it's called Hansard.
So Hansard, and we'll cover this.
Just Google Hansard, and it explains to you why I have an above average record compared to other MPs for the number of debates I participate in, where I'm raising Shrewsbury issues, why I have an above average record for the number of parliamentary questions I pose and ministerial meetings, and voting attendance is very important. So
that's where you guys get like a bell, I believe. Did I learn
division bell?
Yeah, it goes off, and you guys, wherever you are within the area of Powers and Parliament.
We have 8 minutes to get
8 minutes.
We have, when the division bell goes, we have 8 minutes to get through the door,
and
then it slams shut.
And then
I made the mistake once when I was first elected of trying to...
8 minutes one.
Trying to put my foot in the door, and the doorkeeper smashed it because they've got to shut the door after 8 minutes. They will not let you into the lobby after 8 minutes.
Faster, be faster.
So I think people say, where is he? Or he calls me invincible. Well, first of all, Monday to Thursday, you're in the House of Commons. And you're paid to represent your constituents in Parliament. So you need to be in Parliament Monday to Thursday. You need to be there in the chamber. You need to be challenging your own government about the key issues that you consider are priorities for Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury only has one representative, like all other constituencies, and you need to be in the chamber of the House of Commons. You need to be meeting with ministers. So if Mr. Turner wants to know what I'm doing, he shouldn't listen to me. He should actually look at the official public record of Hansard, where he can see every week what I am doing on behalf of my constituents.
Brilliant. Mr. Turner, there is a very good answer. I think there's a longer piece of, and the idea of this is because what you do is quite broad. As we said, you got on the train at 6 o'clock this morning, away from Monday to Thursday. I've worked in the city, and when you are travelling away a lot, I suppose you only left the weekends then. But I also think technology could be used. So this is...
Well, no, you're in the House of Commons Monday to Thursday. You're in the constituency Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
So I work on Friday with meeting constituents.
Yeah.
People come
well, I know you're very
visible.
I mean, we've been out in that over the
Perhaps
weekends.
Perhaps a little bit too visible, being 6'9".
Well, actually invisible, apparently.
You are stopped not just in your office. You're stopped in the supermarket. You're stopped at the garage, at the petrol station.
Occasionally just carry on, step over someone.
And people know and want to be able to get at you and challenge you, and that's a very important aspect.
It is
of being a member.
And
of
I'm going to just step in as well, so people don't know. I think one of the things I have to share is there's always room for improvement. So one of the attempts for this is to try and make you more visible, not to add fuel to the fire. But I think there's always ways, and we can better use technology. That said, I don't think there's anything like this that sits in the constituency. So that opportunity hasn't existed. So MPQs quite regularly will be grilling you, Daniel Kawczynski, holding you to account for the local constituents. I say that with light because some of this topic, I know for other people watching this, may not be front and centre. So the idea of this is try and make this a little bit engaging. Yeah. The next topic then, and I'm going to shift a little bit. I know we said 5 because we can cut this up into many different sectors. It's going to be, let's talk about Hansard really briefly, because we've got you on the clock a little bit. So just run fluidly. Hansard, we'll put a link up. What are the core points it does? So it tracks your attendance in the House of Commons for voting.
Hansard will give you, it is the formal public document which explains how many votes you've participated in.
Fine.
So how you are compared to other MPs.
So voting performance.
For voting performance, number of debates that you've participated in, number of parliamentary questions that you've submitted. And I think what my constituents will find is that approximately 80% of the questions which I pose are related to Shrewsbury.
Yep.
There are some defence questions, there are some foreign office questions, international development questions, but I generally tend to focus on the constituency.
Yeah. We've shared some of these most recently across social media of you doing such said activities.
Yeah. So what you do is you use your position in the House of Commons to try to get these across the finishing line. And let me just very briefly just reference the North West Relief Road, which is the completion of the ring road.
So this is the third of the top 5.
This is the third of the top 5, North West Relief Road. Don't forget one thing. Every time we are working on a project, you have just as many people trying to prevent you from doing it.
Yep.
This isn't North Korea where the leader makes a decision and X or Y is built. This is a Western liberal democracy where people can oppose and use the instruments of the state to try to prevent you from doing it. If I could show you the scars on my back from trying to build to complete the ring road, you would be horrified. Because, I secured the money, the initial money for the Northwest Relief. And by the way, why did I do this? I did this because, again, the rationale behind it is Shrewsbury Business Chamber. The late Graham Gallius, who used to run Shrewsbury Business Chamber, came to see me, put a huge map of Shrewsbury on the desk and said, "We expect you to use your position to get this road built. We've been talking about it for 50 years. Shrewsbury is growing at a disproportionately fast pace. We are moving towards gridlock in Shrewsbury. This is a historic town, and the roads which are there at the moment to try to cope with all the people coming into our town are not coping. We want you to build it." Fine. I use my position. So go to Hansard and look at how I use my position in the House of Commons to secure the funding. But of course, as always, environmentalists and many other people, NIMBYs and many other people.
NIMBYs, what are NIMBYs for everyone watching?
Not in my backyard.
Really? That sounds trendy. Not in my backyard. NIMBYs.
So, NIMBYs are people who...
Is this a wider thing? Because I feel like I'm missing something here.
It's a classic...
Nope.
NIMBY.
NIMBYs.
Oh, yes. Of course, yeah.
Oh,
NIMBY is somebody. This is one
Not in my backyard.
This is one of the reasons why a very important infrastructure project which I supported, HS2. Again, you have to think like the Victorians. You're building for future generations.
Yeah.
HS2 was destroyed because of NIMBYs, because people did not want construction and railway lines going through their constituencies. The costs went through the roof.
I wasn't a fan of HS2.
Well, you say you weren't a fan of HS2.
I probably might not known enough, but at the moment I've got to be truthful.
One of the reasons I was in favour of HS2 is because of capacity.
Right. What, from Manchester into...
No, capacity on the line.
Right.
One of the reasons we struggled to get a direct train service from Shrewsbury to London in the past is because of a lack of capacity on the line. HS2 is creating more capacity for future generations to be able to take advantage of the railway system. But look, Northwest Relief Road, people have been objecting to it.
So quickly,
we've had all sorts of problems with the environment.
So before we go too much, Northwest Relief Road, how much did you raise? How long have you worked on it? What are some of the upsides of it? I'm a massive believer on it, by the way. I fully agree with, what was his name? Graham Bell? No,
so some of the delays that have been caused by the Environment Agency and others who claim that one of the bridges is going to be near an aquifer where drinking water comes for Shrewsbury residents. That's one of the delays, but there have been many other.
The Darwin trees up there.
Darwin tree and many other
bit on the fence.
People
like
trying to stop this.
Just stick it around it.
So construction costs now, would you believe, are 170 million.
I bet. Well, you've been working on it a while.
But I've got the government to pay for the lot.
I commended you. But I really look for these, Punchy. So your work for that position has taken how long?
It's taken many years to get to this point, but the fact remains that the top 5 projects are £1 billion
each. Yeah.
No, in total.
In total, sorry.
So 1,000 million.
Yes.
So when you are a member of parliament, you've got to think to yourself, are the top 5 projects that I've got big enough to warrant my attention?
Business,
and I would argue £1 billion of investment is a huge amount of money. Now, I said to a friend of mine who's another MP, what are you getting for your constituency? He said, oh, that's not my job to get funding for the constituency. My job is to answer constituents' letters and deal with their problems. We deal with that.
On to letters, you do. I've got your scoreboard. You've had 36,000, would you believe, 36,500 letters in the last few years.
Yeah.
You had, what is it, close to, I think we worked it out with guys, so it's 16 letters a day. I mean, who writes letters? Anyone watching this, there's the internet, and you can email. We'll give them an email inbox because writing letters is silly.
Well, we've actually had 42,000 live cases.
Is it 36,000
letters? But actual specific cases.
50,000.
People come to a member of parliament about all sorts of problems.
Well, I sit in the group, and I've seen some rather fascinating requests to think people in cars and things with loud exhausts, and you're like, well, we've got bigger things to fry. But quickly, look, so we've done 3. I think I'm conscious of your time. We need 4 and 5. What's your 4th one?
Well, obviously, flooding, town centre, Northwest Relief Road. The 4th one, Future Fit. £312 million investment in the modernisation of A&D services in our local hospital trust.
Now, this one for me, I find really compelling is the manner in which you've got to the number. Again, this is probably due to the commercial stuff you've got. From what we've said, this was fully built and supported off the feedback of surgeons, doctors, everyone within the department or in that sphere that it was going to influence. So this decision is completely to do with the organisation itself.
300 surgeons and doctors, the men and women who are at the coalface of providing these services. Now look at this desk. Look at the size of this desk. And that is Shropshire and Mid Wales. That area, the desk, is Shropshire and Mid Wales. These two pinpricks next to each other, those are the 2 hospitals covering the whole. It
was 1,234 square miles. I've recently seen that in some documentation that I read.
The hospitals are only 13 miles apart, covering the whole of Shropshire and Mid Wales.
And Mid Wales, yeah. And Mid Wales is probably the important bit for everyone to remember.
And yet, the problem that we have in our county, which is very different to many other counties, whether it's Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, Somerset, other counties understand the interdependence that exists between everybody in the county. We don't here in Shropshire. Telford, it seems, is an independent republic within a county, and they do their own things. They've got their own council, and the leader of Telford Council, Sean Davis, has used his position to try to block these changes because there is a reconfiguration of services. The main A&D will be at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, and it also means women's and children's services coming to Shrewsbury. But because he has delayed and blocked and threatened and cajoled, we got the money, £312 million,
how many years ago?
7 years ago.
I mean, inflation
and we're only
halved.
now getting to construction.
So, Sean, if you're watching this, we'd love to hear from you. Open forum. There'll be comments and things. It'd be nice to have a chat with you on here. If you
he would say he's standing up for the interests of Telford. But what I would say to you is,
give us a message.
These 2 hospitals are just 13 miles apart, and they cover the whole of Shropshire and Mid Wales. The sooner we start to listen and respect to the clinicians on the ground,
I think that's everything I take from this. Is if 312 voices of people that know what they're doing versus 1 or 2 people in positions of power doesn't really add up. So I think that's probably the takeaway from this. I think what you've done there is fantastic. I think the interesting thing to let everyone know, 312 million was agreed 7 years ago for that's like, and I mean, what was inflation if we just run the numbers? That'd be phenomenal anyway. But the work started, so it's ongoing. I think there's worry at the moment that might stop, depending on...
Work has started, but one thing I will say, which is very controversial, is that...
Love a bit of controversy.
I'm not happy with the level of management the quality of management within the NHS.
I think that's a shared view.
And I have seen, as a member of Parliament over the last, if you were to ask me, what is the thing that has worried you more than anything else in your experience of representing Shrewsbury over the last 19 years, unequivocally and without reservation, I would say it is the poor managerial level within the NHS. I am now on my 7th or 8th chief executive of the hospital trust. They come in, it's a revolving door, they tip things up, and then they leave. Nobody seems to be able to take a decision. They weren't prepared to stand up to Sean Davis. This would not be tolerated in the private sector. No. And I'm afraid a lot of highly paid managers within the NHS are letting us down. So that's something which is indelibly imprinted on my mind.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I used to sell health and safety stuff many moon ago for the British Safety Council. I once worked in the health and safety audits. Was there 12 trusts or something? And one of the things that always stuck with me, I think they were wasting about £1 million a year on the procurement of Bic biros because of the lack of centralised procurement. That's just one of the things that's always sat with me. So the fact now we're talking about a real lack of middle to senior management ability does not surprise me. I think having had a fairly successful corporate career, often military career, leadership and people management been at the forefront of all of it. So every time I look into the public sector, it's probably the biggest thing that it's like a cord that runs through it all, I think, is that lack. There's no real leadership.
And we need to have a debate ultimately about how healthcare is provided.
I'm going to throw a curveball in. What about the ambulance charges for Rizzy? He's just seen saw a comment about that on socials this morning. Rizzy's trying to charge for ambulances, I believe. Is it call out for ambulances? Because I have no doubt someone put that in the comments. Have you seen it?
No.
I can't answer the question. Yeah, but there was a little post. It might be fake news, but yeah. Suggestions, it's £96 for an ambulance call out, but again we have a shared view on the state of the system. Fifth and final top five.
The fifth and final, of course, is a long-term project, which is something I promised young people at the last election in 2019, is the electrification of the line between Wolverhampton and Shrewsbury. We still use these antiquated diesel trains. I was very pleased to have secured a major refurbishment of Shrewsbury railway station in the last Parliament, so it's looking much better than it did. The Dana Bridge and the new waiting room and the ticket office and all the rest of it. But we need modern, efficient trains connecting us to our regional capital, Birmingham. Working practices are changing a lot, so we will have more and more people, living in Shrewsbury but working in Birmingham.
And there's been a big shift, I think, COVID,
Absolutely, and that's why I'm trying to get faster trains, more reliable trains, a better service, and electrification on the line. But you see, because now some of these projects are coming to the fruition, like North West Relief Road and Future Fit, I'm looking for the next big projects, and we've already selected one. The other day I went to...
So we've got number 6 coming in.
Well, we've got one of them being replaced. And the other day, and you are inspired as a member of Parliament, you get to see all sorts of fascinating things. I went to a restaurant the other day in a church where every single member of staff had special needs. So the cook, the waitresses, the maitre d', everybody who worked in that restaurant had special needs, and it was a fascinating experience to have spent an afternoon in that restaurant. We have England's second largest school for children with special needs.
Yes,
Sevendale. And I was invited there the other day by 2 very professional ladies who run the school, and I heard at first I was taken into each class to meet with each of the different types of children that were being taught at Sevendale, and I feel that one of the projects I want to take on now is actually actively looking at additional support and funding for children with special needs, because we do not have enough people with special needs in frontline services in this country. And this community, these citizens could make such a huge contribution to our local economy if they had the right support. I was amazed by the level of dedication from those teachers at Sevendale School. It really impressed me. And so we are taking on, and they've agreed to this, we are going to be working hand in glove with the management of Sevendale School to get them in front of ministers and to get them the additional resources that they need to help these children, who ultimately will then contribute to our society in the way that you and I and others can and should do, not just in terms of benefits for the economy, but for their own satisfaction.
I mean, we've talked about this the other day. You break a great point, and in fact, I was talking about Mrs. We went to the gym last night. She's a community health nurse. I think an 18-year-old, it means under 18-year-old girls that get pregnant. She spends a lot of time with these individuals. I mean, as young as 14, shocking scenes. Normally in very, very awful living conditions. Just been put in a brand new house opposite me in Otley Road. I mean, this place is like 250 grand, which is great. I'm glad you're happy. But at 18, you just worry that, like, some of the fundamental things with our mental health, I think, are grounded in a sense of purpose, the feeling of accomplishment day to day. And that comes from, I think, one, being able to contribute, two, being able to do a day's work of some sort. So, I mean, there's never been any more information about mental health as there is right now, but the problem's not getting any better. I just worry, and my views are solely grounded in, as a human being part of something bigger than yourself, committing to something on a daily basis that gives you that sense of reward. So I'm a big fan of that. That's kind of cool. Because I think that goes back to a big part of how we feel day to day. So that's cool, especially with people that will probably find it harder because of certain challenges that they are to get into these positions.
I was particularly, when I went into one of the classes, one child came up to me and said, "Oh, you're Donald Trump, aren't you?" which I
you know, a Donald Trump picture's getting.
I was horrified that somebody would mistake me for Donald Trump.
He's only a bit shorter, though, isn't
he? His son is very tall. I know that.
Brilliant. Look, before we finish, Dan, it's been good. I'm really looking forward to MPQs a bit more regularly. Hopefully, you're going to get something out of this, but as much
very enjoyable. Thank you.
Good, thank you. I want to finish with some of the comments because for me, I spend a lot of time on social media. It's the lifeblood of society. A good friend of mine says that about an Amazon service we offer. But I think there's a degree of a realism to it. We talk about accessing things like Hansard. I won't lie, I'd never do it. I don't even like reading a letter that gets sent through the door. I actually got a parking charge the other day. My mum filled it out because I didn't want to read it. So I will, however... another one there, Rich. I will, however, literally dig into some comments because I think let's try and get the most out of social media. So let's have a little roll through. So Georgie Moosh, hopefully I've pronounced that right. Perhaps missing a couple of letters, but not going to bring that up. He'd like to pressure the government into processing these people claims so they can either get on with their lives and contribute to our society or be returned to whence they came. Until they do so, this situation continue and repeated throughout the country. 45 likes. I actually think it's a fair comment. Are there any thoughts on that?
On which one?
The Georgie Moosh one, the top one. We'll just start at the top. He just talks about essentially getting to a place where we try and fix the problem rather than housing them. I think that's an extremely big issue, but any thoughts?
About well, we have a housing crisis in this country.
We do.
We have a housing crisis in this country in part because we have too high levels of migration.
Yep.
And I speak as somebody who was a migrant to this country in 1978, but then of course we came here.
A long time ago, that now.
Yes, I was only 6, but of course we came here legally. And what is very important at the moment, a lot of people say to me that they want and expect the illegal migration which is taking place in the English
should be managed
to be managed.
Yeah,
it's more difficult. Because of the sea, I visited the border between Lithuania and Russia some time ago. Huge fences, huge barbed wire.
We've got a
huge
photo of
patrols.
that, actually. We will put
We've
up.
got a photo.
Yep.
So, but because we are, because they are coming across the channel, which is the busiest international waterway in Europe.
It's only 22 miles. I mean, people are swimming it.
And there is no international water between the two. The French water ends and the British water starts right in the middle. So we're doing everything possible to make sure that we start to send these illegal migrants overseas. But again, we have had a huge fight with the judiciary
Yes.
and many other people who want to prevent us from doing this.
The tug of war, as you
The tug of war.
Wyn Jones, top contributor. Like you say, he's been silent about this for a few years, so I presume he's trying to take credit for something that has already been mentioned. He's an overpaid joke and done nothing for us. Well, Wyn, hopefully you've had a little view of this and would be slightly more informed. I'm not sure how much you get paid, Daniel. I'm not sure what overpaid means. I'm not sure. My view of what I would get out of bed for might be a little bit more than others, so we probably should leave that one.
I get paid about half what I did when I was in my early 30s, when I was in the commercial world.
There we go. I think as a businessman, we talk about the problem that exists. So I'll answer this for you, Wyn. I probably wouldn't be a politician because it wouldn't pay me enough. So that's probably being transparent. We've got a few businesses in the room. So I think from a businessman to a politician, I wouldn't want to get mud thrown at me like you do all the time in the political position you hold. But certainly I commend you because I know the rates of pay are much less than what you could probably earn if you're outside in the how would you say, the commercial world.
It's very easy for Wyn Jones to cast stones, but actually standing for a political party, fighting for your constituents in the House of Commons is it has its frustrations and difficulties, but I've done it for 19 years. I've got that experience. I'm very proud of the achievements that we've got for Shrewsbury.
Can I just
which
say,
are all listed on our website. So yes, it's very easy, and we get this all the time. And this is why you have in your office, petrol poured through your office, and dog poo put through your office, and death threats and all those things, because a lot of people out there have no idea what MPs do,
I think,
or their responsibilities, or what we do in Parliament. And I think it's comparable. When I've been to a football match sometimes, and you see the crowd booing and jeering from the stands. Very easy to boo, very easy to jeer when you're surrounded by other people and you're jeering at the footballer or the football manager.
Yeah,
it's much more difficult being the football manager and being the football player, and actually being there on the field. So I suggest to some of these people, if they feel really strongly about it, they should stand for Parliament themselves.
That's a very fair point. I think trying to be fairly neutral on this is quite difficult for me because I like being polarising sometimes. But the aim of this is to try and offer an outlet, I guess, a pressure release valve on some of these feelings, because I get the community must feel or does feel frustrated at the moment. I would have said I was, of the principles of Tory at heart, but I don't believe either party at the moment. There could be a middle ground here rather than us all having to decide. But that's my own views. But I do believe there's a lack of information for people that maybe I'm going to be really polite in this, don't have the time to spend to educate themselves. Well, so I'm trying to create.
We've got some of the comments.
Saying
that about the Lion Hotel, and it's racist and xenophobic, actually, and that I'm trying to take the credit. You see, they're making these comments without understanding the timescales of what's happened.
And the Member of
Parliament gets letters of complaint from constituents. which I've had hundreds from my constituents. What are you doing about the Lion Hotel? Why aren't you stopping it being used in this way?
Let's talk about that. What was the driver to the Lion Hotel decision? Because that might help everyone on these top contributors. I'm really impressed with the amount of top contributors here.
I had a lot of. I was concerned that the Lion Hotel was being used in this way. We need to free up a maximum amount of hotel capacity for Shrewsbury, not just to accommodate people during the flower show, during the beer festival, during all the other major events that Shrewsbury has, but in general, we need to offer accommodation for incoming tourists. But I said nothing to begin with. Then I received hundreds of letters and emails of complaint from constituents saying that something needed to be done.
I think that's the more important thing. I guess, and this must be frustrating when you sit in here and we see all these things. So I'm quite keen to get to the whys. Everything else you do is clearly very pragmatic and thought through. So hopefully we're knocking some walls down, right? And I would urge people to look at more of like the details. There's some interesting questions up here about what's been done. What are the things since he's been done in government? So,
but let me just finish that point, which is I went to see Tom Pursglove, who's the minister responsible, and I said to him, look, if you want me to start asking questions in the House of Commons about how these venues have been selected, because there is one important aspect here. Okay, admittedly, at this moment in time, because of the levels of migration that have been taking place, these people need to be accommodated somewhere. But I said, look at the towns across the country where tourism is the number one or number two income generator. And let's see how many towns where tourism is disproportionately important to the local economy, where you are using hotels.
Right, fine. Makes sense.
Because that would demonstrate that you are not taking into consideration that facility being disproportionately important for that.
Brilliant. There you go. So that's
and I had three separate meetings with Tom Pursglove, and in the end, these meetings are all attended by civil servants and documented.
Answer.
And I said to him eventually, convinced him through a methodical way of explaining to him that this needed a resolution. So I did it because my constituents were urging me to do it.
I think that's the bit we need to get here. You'd got a lot of communication from constituents that were concerned about it. I know there was a bomb. Wasn't there a bomb threat a while ago? That caused a bit of a hoo-ha on social media, for want of a better description. But I know nothing about it, so before you start typing on the comments.
Conversely, for those who talk about racism and xenophobia, may I just say that conversely, when I was informed that Afghans who had worked for the British Army in translation and support, the brave men and women in Afghanistan who worked with British Armed Forces. When I was informed that some of them will be housed in the former army barracks in Nestcliff, I had people contacting me demanding that I would deal with that. And I said no.
I guess these people are worried about the security risk.
No, these people have,
I know what they've done.
Come here legally, deserve
the people that were writing to you, I guess, would have been coming from a position of worried about them being there. Is that because why would people want them out? Because I agree with you. What they've done for the country in their own country to fulfill a position of a translator is extremely.
Well, first of all, it's a very different scenario when you have been employed legally by the British Army in a theatre of operations overseas, and you've come to the United Kingdom legally, and you're being temporarily housed somewhere before you move into the system, and you can't and you need to compare and contrast that scenario with somebody who was paid a criminal thousands of pounds to smuggle them illegally into the United Kingdom, breaking our rules and regulations.
So the people in Nestcliff that were writing to you, or about the Nestcliff, I wouldn't have known the detail again, I guess. Because all this is great, by the way, and I know your intentions for all these things are very well placed. The real crux of what I'm keen to do is probably squash some of this is the whys and the reasons. So understanding the landscape. So I'm guessing the people, the constituents of Nestcliff, when they were writing to stop it, probably weren't aware of the mix of individuals. Would that be fair to say?
It could be, but it's not fair to say that they were just from Nestcliff. There were other people writing to me on this issue.
So your broader constituents.
You have to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
But as I say, I think the next election, I'm looking forward to the flights taking off in the spring. The House of Lords has tried to prevent us from doing this. Every other country that has disincentivized criminal gangs from targeting them has a policy of sending illegal migrants overseas.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom needs to do this. Otherwise, these criminal gangs will continue to operate in an unhindered way around our coastline. So immigration, I want to get rid of immigration as being in the top 3 or 4 issues at the general election. I want to talk about schools, hospitals, the economy, infrastructure.
Fixing things.
But the only way we will take out immigration as a thorny issue during a general election campaign is if we can convince the British people that immigration, which is necessary for our country, we benefit enormously from the contribution that migrants make to this country, but it needs to be done
in a measured,
managed way, which is working in the interests of the United Kingdom. We're very proud that we've taken in a lot of people from Hong Kong, from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Ukraine. And let's not forget one thing. The United Kingdom sends more money in international aid than almost any other European country. And we do a great deal in welcoming and supporting those who are fleeing genuine persecution. I'm very proud of that. So this gentleman who talks about xenophobia and racism, he could not be further away from the truth. And again, very easy to cast aspersions in the way that he is doing. I think, there's much more to it than meets the eye.
There is, and I think, again, we've said it, that's the reason I think hopefully we'll be able to do more of these sit-downs regularly, because I think this stuff is exactly what's needed. Everyone's online, everyone has a busy day, I know. Or you're like me and you just don't like reading, so you'd rather digest something visually. So we've summarised your top 5. I found out even more about the things you're doing. It's been really enjoyable. I think we should just be sharing a little bit more. If you've got comments and you're watching this, please do put them in there. Try and limit all the too much negative hate. I will probably just delete it if it's just toxic and unhelpful. Probably looking for ways to provide a platform to engage in a healthy conversation is probably what I'd like.
Let me also say one other thing, which is very important. I speak as the only member of Parliament out of 650. We talked about how few of us there are from the commercial world. But I am the only one who was born in a communist country.
Yes, I think that's an interesting point you make.
Where you have communism, you have one party, you have one view, and anybody who challenges it is either locked up or taken away and disappeared. We should celebrate the fact that we have different views, that we have different priorities and ideological beliefs. These are fundamental.
That's identity. It's
democracy.
It's hard.
And if we all believe the same thing, there would be
boring,
none of that ability to challenge and debate. So yes, let's debate. And by the way, the commitment that you have from me is that, and I've already started it by writing to my Labour opponent on an issue to do with the hospital. Let's have a debate, but when we have hustings and when we debate with one another, let's do it in a measured and professional way,
fashion.
without pandering to this attitude of hatred which is building up towards politicians from certain people online. We are losing a lot of talent of people, some of whom have been there for a very short period of time.
It's got to be a recruitment drive issue. Jobs
because of the amount of abuse that they get from people like that online.
So I think it's 2 ways where I look at it. This is our commitment here, just trying to provide a platform of information to offer things to and fro, I guess, is probably the good way to do this, and this is it. So it's really nice that you're willing to come on. I also believe it's a great way just to share some some information about people, because I'd agree to this point, probably from my own lack of trying. It was very hard probably for me to get an understanding of how it works. I think the other thing I'd like to dig in post or next sessions will be about your team. What does the team look like? Again, I had no idea. You've got your agent, you've got the officers, the Shrewsbury Association that sit here in Shrewsbury. There's some conversation about a clinic, choose a partner, coffee shop. Here's one if you want to partner and give us some free brews and some cakes for half a day once a month. I think there'll be an opportunity then for the local constituents to ask questions. I guess the real thing here is visibility and better communication using the tools that we've got. Dan, just on the invisible question, because he's 6'9", he's massive. But I do kind of share, but I know we've talked about this off camera about the conversation or some of the things that probably people feel you've been invisible for. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I think that, many years ago, I asked the former MP for Hereford, Sir Colin Shepherd, he was the MP from 1974 to 1997, and I said, with all of your experience, what's the most important thing that you want to share with me? And he said, I worked every hour that God sends. For the 24 years I was an MP, but I didn't communicate with the electorate. And so, of course, when the 1997 election came and Mr. Blair swept to power, he lost his seat. And he said, communicating with the electorate all the time as to what you are doing and why is so important. And I think the biggest mistake that I have made is that my whole office is structured around day-to-day delivery,
the doing
with constituents, the doing.
Yeah,
there are some MPs who have used their budgets, their parliamentary budgets, to hire full-time PR people.
Yeah, which to me as a businessman makes sense.
Which you're perfectly entitled to. We haven't done that because we've always focused on the day-to-day issues that people are bringing to our attention. But now I realise, and thanks to the fundraising efforts of my local party, so that we're not using taxpayers' money, but we're doing this ourselves.
That's probably an important point. This isn't taxpayers' money you're now using.
It is. We're raising the money ourselves, and working with people like professionals, with like people like you, to make sure that we are communicating what we are doing, because, as you said, it's unrealistic to expect people to go to bed with Hansard, with a copy of Hansard as their bedtime story.
More likely to read
what their member of parliament is doing on their behalf.
Agreed.
So we're starting to wake up and learn from that mistake.
That's good.
But I'm delighted that we're communicating more effectively.
Brilliant. David, no, who's it? I don't want to say. Wherever there was one worried about being invisible. I think, again, while I make light of all this, because it's better to be a bit optimistic than too neggy with all this stuff, I think hopefully that should answer your question. I think I'm pretty impressed by the fact that's a fairly honourable thing to do. I'm going to say this as someone that is kind of new to politics. It's probably bucking the trend a little bit of some of your colleagues nationally, but I think that's really good. Wrapping that up, lovely to see you. We'll have a little dink of the first D&G mugs. Cheers, Richard Calvert-Taylor, Dickie Taylor, putting these in. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thanks for coming on.
And please have your wonderful sausage dog.
The Ginger Prince.
He'll make Ginger Prince next time I come.
Thank you,
because I'm very fond of that dog.